You know, a lot of people thought that a pig started the conflict. Just a little pig. And a lot of history books have recorded that it was the pig that started the conflict. But it actually happened 15 years before. It was in the twilight days of the Civil War, and it was pretty near closing up, and a group of men were coming home, and they had fought for the Confederacy. And as they were coming home, they ran into a local boy named Harmon McCoy who had fought for the Union. And they hunted down Harmon and shot him dead. It was all legit. It was a war casualty, but it never sat well with the McCoys. And for the next 15 years, things began to stew. Things would be said. Groups of people would gather, and different comments were made. Cold shoulders were given. So when that pig crossed the Tug Fork River and the Big Sand River, and the Hatfields said, "That's our pig," all hell broke loose. And in 10 years, 13 people had been brutally murdered. Countless others had been injured. And you can take a little pin on your map and draw a little circle around that area, and you'll see that for several decades, it left its imprint on the education system, on society. The economy was greatly affected. Church life was nil to zero. The Kentucky militia invaded West Virginia. The Supreme Court got involved. And we know this is the Hatfields and McCoys. It's just this eye for eye, tooth for tooth type conflict that's deep within our nature. And we might think, wow, that was a group of uneducated hillbillies, that explains it all. But you could move forward 150 years and just move that little circle just a little bit to the northeast and put it around Washington, D.C., and make the Hatfields and McCoys look like child play. It's at that point, and I can make no guarantees. It's at a boiling point. It's like a powder keg where, if you say I'm of one party and another person's of another party, things can get ugly real quick. There was a lady lost her job just about 2 weeks ago, and there was a group from another party saying we got to make sure she never ever finds another job, that no one employs her, and if she's out in public, we've got to face her off and attack her. And I'm thinking, what is going on? And it's that eye for eye, tooth for tooth mentality, and we could move it to other little towns and other little villages and see the same thing. And today we might not shoot anyone in the back. We might not take it to the other level, drive-by shooting, but today in our high-tech society, we're literally destroying, devaluing, belittling people through technology. Left and right. We're kind of become high-tech serial killers. And there's that same mentality that we see sometimes in our marriage and in neighborhoods, family gatherings, where it's kind of like, you're not going to step on me and get away with it. Don't give me no lip. Don't make me come down there. You better not park in my parking spot. I just don't let people do that. And we have this same type of thing growing. And I've been close up with many marriages, and sometimes as I counsel, I feel like I'm sitting before two junkyard dogs. I mean, just, and the viciousness, and it's just so, it's there. And you realize you're talking to one mate, maybe a husband, and you just see this big scar on his life, and you realize that he got that scar from his wife. You see that she's missing an ear over there, and she's missing an ear because her husband took it off, and he's missing a leg, and she's missing a tail, and it's just like, what are you guys doing? The level of, just the teeth showing, and I'm thinking, what in the world happened to that lovely little couple that's for better, for worse, and googly-eyed, and, what has taken place here? And at best, many marriages just kind of rumble along at a low-level animosity. It's just kind of low-level, I'm right, you're wrong. you got lucky when you married me, type attitude. Like, get a clue. Your family's not as brilliant as my family. And you see this kind of roll along. I talked with the state trooper back here at the North Door and one time, and he had been a policeman in a small town. I said, what's the difference between being a state trooper and a local cop? And he says, the accident scenes. When you're in town, you get an accident, you drive up there, and you can put things back together again. But when you're out on the interstate, 70, 80 miles an hour plus, things happen, and you can never put it back together again. As a long-term pastor, I've seen a lot of this eye for eye, tooth for tooth takes place in marriages and churches and businesses. And the damage it does, much like that state trooper, you can't put it back together again. I've seen businesses where literally one department is so out to get the other department to belittle them, tear apart. They don't care if they tear the entire company apart. And I've seen companies tore apart to where the company is no more because of anger. I've seen it in family get-togethers that, man, you can feel it. I don't know if you've ever been to a family reunion. You come in where there's a fight. You can feel it in the air that some type of anger, something has taken place there. Or I think about marriages sometimes, or churches. I was in this one church and I ministered, and it was about this size. And as I looked around that church, or I got there early and I did my normal thing, went around greeting and talking to different people. And as I was doing that, I realized that there were 2 people here, there were 2 people there, 2 people here. No one was sitting next to anyone. They were just all evenly spread out. And of course, me, I'm glad I didn't do this. A lot of times I'll say, hey, it's Sunday night, let's all gather together and sit together. But I didn't do that, luckily, because I found out later as I was at the altar with this one guy that was in tears. He says, I don't know what to do about our church because everyone hates everyone. They don't want to even sit together. They don't even talk to each other. And they would just come in their seats and leave. And I'm thinking on the outside, there's a town that was so devastated on the outside of that town. And so Jesus comes with this Sermon on the Mount. And it turns everything upside down. He looks at stuff at a way that can really irritate us. And we begin seeing this in Matthew 5, verse 38, and he says this, you have heard that it said, you have heard that it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And that's in many cultures today. There's cultures even today that if you break out someone's tooth, and you go to law over it, they'll grab that other man and you break their tooth out, or their eye gets poked out, you get to poke their eye out. And we think, well, we're more educated than that. We don't do that here. Oh, yes, we do. Because if you break out someone's tooth in an accident, you will get the bill and then some. If you poke someone's eye out, you're probably going to lose $1 million. It's still there today. It's still there today. This get even syndrome. And Jesus begins to challenge this. He begins to look at this upside down way. I'm going to just jump to a verse in 1 Corinthians 7. I think it's kind of interesting. It says this, now therefore it is already an utter failure for you that you go to the law one against another. Why do you not rather accept wrong? Why don't you accept wrong? Why don't you overlook something? Why don't you not start a fight on that? Why don't you don't put in your 2 cents on that? Why don't you not give a cold shoulder? Why don't you accept some wrong? Rather, why don't you let yourself be cheated? How many people have anyone here owned a Welsh Corgi? Anyone? We didn't have any at the first service. I think they're expensive dogs. That's why the Queen has them. We got one. Welsh Corgi. Oh, we got one over here. Bob, okay. Welsh Corgi. From what I understand, they can take a lot of abuse and not snap. I mean, I've understood a child can grab that Welsh Corgi and pull it a little bit by its tail and it won't bite, or an ear can be pulled. It puts up with a lot of punishment and it still can be a nice dog, And that's why they're valuable and precious dogs, because they have that mentality. And sometimes we can use some of that DNA. Instead of being a junkyard, we could be more of a Welsh Corgi. And how does that happen? It has a different DNA. And sometimes we need Jesus' DNA, where we can overlook a fight that would have been a good fight to have had and begin to change. Throughout the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus addresses this conflict issue, this get even, this retaliation. You're going to not push me around type attitude, or I'm going to get even. Don't take advantage of me. And twice in the very opening, in his opening monologue in the Beatitudes, he addresses this. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Then he goes, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. Now, Tyler's going to work through this in a few weeks. It's a very powerful area, these Beatitudes. But that merciful, are we merciful people? Are we showing mercy? If we're people that, man, we don't put up with anything. You know, if we get pushed, we're going to push back. If someone says something about us, we're going to say something about them. If they send us out a wicked email, we're going to send them out a more wicked email, and vice versa. If they post something about us on Facebook, we're going to post something about them. But Jesus says, let me talk about this upside down way. The Jesus way of doing this is show mercy. I'm going to be a merciful person. And if we are merciful and we overlook what our wife says, what our kids says, what our mother-in-law says, and what our boss says, and we respond back with mercy, we will obtain it. I don't know about you, but I would like to walk under and stay under that cloud of mercy as I walk through the day. What a beautiful picture, to be under the mercy of God. Or be a peacemaker, be a person that can defuse a fight. And it's like, man, you're like a man from another planet. You're like a son of God. How in the world are you doing that? Because we're operating with Jesus' DNA. And that's that upside down picture he shows us, that we can walk under the mercy of God, that we can walk like we're not even from this planet. We can walk like sons and daughters of God. But then the contrast he gives is the curse side of human nature. Matthew 5:21 and 22. You have heard it said of old, you shall not murder. It's a big word. Sometimes you always say, I had a good week, I didn't murder anybody. I mean, we stop there. We think, the 10 Commandments, I really haven't broken them. But he goes forward. And whoever murders will be in danger of judgment. But, here he is turning it upside down. But I say to you that whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of judgment. And whoever says to his brother, Raka, which means airhead, shall be in danger of the council. But whoever says fool shall be in danger of hellfire. And so he says there's a curse side to human nature. And he addresses the root. And he addresses this anger. Don't play around with proud anger, because something bad will happen. If we play around with anger, something bad will happen. Right now I'm in a construction process on something, and I have a trail of pieces of plywood down to the construction zone. But when the conditions are just right, that plywood turns into a slide. And there's been times I step from one that seems like it's okay, I hit the other one, the next thing I know, I'm doing a split. There have been a couple times that I go check it before I go to work, and I've had to come back in and get a shower and change my outfit because I go down. Or sometimes I actually get really cool and I surf that plywood all the way down the hill. I'm impressed with myself, But no telling what's going to happen, where you're going to go, where you're going to end up. And that's what happens, Jesus says, when you start releasing anger, don't be surprised where it takes you, because it will kill something. It can kill a friendship. It can kill a marriage. It can destroy a business. It can destroy a church. And Jesus said, don't play with anger. It is just that deadly. Matthew 5:23. Therefore, if you bring your gift to the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar. Go on your way. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come offer your gift. Agree with your adversary, what's that word? Within 2 weeks? When you're upset with someone, let it sit. Let them pay penance. Let them have a little prison time before you forgive them. Have them feel that ice queen feeling or the ice king feeling for maybe a couple months. How should we respond? What's that word? Can we say it? Quickly. And I think this is a big thing we need to understand, that we need to be quick to stop the feuding and prevent the death. It's something you can't play with. The Bible says, do not let the sun go down on your wrath. If you're sitting here this morning, I'm sitting here this morning, and we're 2 or 3 days old with a division between us and a brother or a husband and wife, shame on us. We need to be quick to resolve it because it doesn't improve, it doesn't age well with time. It starts to smell worse. It's more devastating to us. So we need to be quick with it. We need to stop the murder. We need to get rid of the list. We need to start afresh. Matthew 5:41 through 43 tells us this. And whoever compels you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Give to him who asks you, and from him who wants to borrow from you, do not turn away. You have heard it said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies, bless those that curse you, do good to those that hate you, and pray for those that despitefully use you. Jesus starts to give instructions of how to deal with enemy, how to deal with conflict, how to diffuse things. And he begins to talk about forgiveness. Forgiveness is an interesting word. It comes out of the French, pardonner, which means to pardon. So often when we don't forgive a person, we put them in prison. Or maybe a better way to describe it, we take that dog, that junkyard dog, we chain it to what they've done wrong to us. It might be an engine, it might be a transmission, it might be that they forgot something, it might be they said something, and we chain them to what they've done wrong. We're not quick, we don't let it go, we don't forgive, and then we start to develop this, junkyard dog mentality in that person. Because every time we go past them on the chain, we yell at them, we poke at them, we don't ever really nourish them, we don't ever really pet them, and then we wonder, what's wrong with the husband I married? What's wrong with the wife I've married? We don't give them any time. We just chain them, bad weather, we don't care, whatever the issue is, and we leave them chained up. And that's where that word forgive means to give them pardon in the French. The wild thing, this blew me away, this is an old word, and it comes over into the English language. And part of forgiveness is you begin to give. You begin to nourish. You begin to show kindness. You begin to pursue. You begin to pet. You begin to open your life up to them. That's what the word forgive means. In the Old English, that's the exact same word that means given in marriage. Isn't that powerful? That's what marriage is all about. It's a place where there's a lot of forgiveness. A lot of forgiveness. We've got to understand it. We've got to understand that's a major component of marriage. This enemy thing is a real thing. And as we're going through this, and a lot of our enemies are up close. And sometimes we realize that we do have an enemy. And I've had enemies in my life, and you've had enemies in your life. And he gives instructions on what to do. There in Matthew 5:41 through 44, it tells us to pray, to bless, to do good. And I've talked with people. I've had people in, and they come in telling me what this person did or what this boss did or this mate did or whatever. And it's like they kind of want to justify why they're not forgiving. And sometimes I'll bring up this passage, and I've had people get very upset. There's no way I can forgive them. You don't know what they did. And they're constantly on their little bully pulpit telling you all the faults that person did. Everyone they see, they tell about all their faults. And I'm saying, that's not what the Bible says to do. You need to be quick about this, and you need to start praying for that person. Never talk about that person. Begin praying for that person. When you say that, that person freaks out. There's no way I could pray for them. You don't know what they have done to me. You don't know how they've ruined my life. You don't know how they've ruined my kids. You don't know how they've ruined my career. But Jesus said, hey, if you want to live this upside down life, if you want to walk in mercy, you need to begin to pray. And that's hard to do. I've been there where all of a sudden you start praying for a person. In fact, sometimes you can tell you have unforgiveness because it's hard to read the Bible, because every time you read the Bible, you start getting aggravated at a person. You start playing that tape about what they did, what they said. Every time you start to worship God, it's like, whoa, I've had a time here, and I'll share about it a little bit later, where I just came and sat over there and just looked at that cross. Just looked at the cross. And it helped me get a perspective of why I should forgive. And it's hard. It's like, God, I just pray for that. You can't even say their name. It's kind of like a Hatfield saying McCoy, or a Democrat saying a Republican, or, I'm going to be nice. I'm going to take them out to lunch, or I'm going to talk to them, or I'm going to say something good about them. And the first step is to pray. Because you can tell when forgiveness starts to happen because you pray until you can do good. You pray until all of a sudden, hey, I want to bless that person. And that really, how, you pray. God gives you understanding. You start to bless that person. You start to give. You start to go next extra mile. You start to give a new chance. You start getting rid of this 3 strikes and you're out. But you begin to pray until you're in that place where you can bless. It's such a big issue. Here he is talking about the Sermon on the Mount. It shows up in the Lord's Prayer. We say the Lord's Prayer all the time, but the center part of that Lord's Prayer is forgiveness. Give us this day our daily bread. What's the context there? Give us this day our daily. What kind of context is there? Daily. How often do we eat? 3 times a day, daily. And then right next to it, and forgive us our debts as we forgive others our debt. You can see this daily, multiple times a day, we have to be in a position to forgive. Before this day's out, maybe even before you leave this building, someone will offend you. Someone will drive through the parking lot and you're walking and they're in their nice dry car and they're going to splash you with water, and it's like, I'm going to stop going to that church, or whatever. You're going to have opportunities today. Some of you are still not forgiving some refs from your bracket loss because some ref missed traveling or something like, you're just bent out of shape. You're ready to protest, and you're hating a ref somewhere out there, but we're called to forgive our debtors daily. And that's front and center of this is today we've got to forgive. In fact, the prayer actually is this way. And Jesus, they said, teach us how to pray. How do we have effective prayer life? Very first part of the day, we make provision for forgiveness. We get with the Lord and we realize it's a daily walk, and give me provision for forgiveness before our husband does something stupid today. I've already forgiven my wife before she did this or said that. We've got to build that provision, and we've got to understand that conflict is coming. Words will be said, and we've got to have that DNA of that Welsh Corgi that, man, someone's going to yank on my tail today. Someone's going to grab my ear with something today. Someone's going to kick me or stumble over me. But I've already made provision through the ability of the Lord Jesus Christ to forgive. And it doesn't stop there. In the Lord's Prayer, it tells us in 6:13, and this is where it gets sobering, and do not lead us into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. Don't want to murder, don't want to commit adultery, I don't want any sins. And the biggest, to me, probably the biggest sin issue, unforgiveness is the biggest temptation that opens up our lives to the devil. He's talking about unforgiveness. That's one of the biggest things that will take us out. In fact, it opens up to the door to the devil. If we don't forgive, if we don't start overlooking something, if we don't quickly move on something, it's like open up your door and inviting unwelcome guests in. There's some people you wouldn't want in your house. But one person you do not want in your house is the devil. Because there's 3 things that he does oh so well. John 10:10 says his 3 purposes are: he's going to steal something, he's going to kill something, or he's going to destroy something. And husbands and wives, when you walk around for a long period of time with unforgiveness, he's stealing from you. He's killing. He's destroying. He'll take your kids out. He'll take your future out. He'll take your energy out. He'll take romance out. He'll take joy out. And that's why we've got to daily forgive. We've got to make provision. We've got to show some mercy with people that will. They do. It's just hard. It's hard to live under the same roof without saying some things that aren't pleasant. It's hard to live under the same roof without sometimes being selfish or sometimes not caring. And we do the same thing, and we've got to make provision for it daily. Matthew 6:14 and 15 says this: For if you forgive men their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. And this is huge. But if you do not forgive men their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive you your trespasses. I want to tell you, unforgiveness to others short circuits God's forgiveness to us. It short circuits us. And we've got to watch it. Sometimes we get real proud in this, and we'll get up on our high horse and we'll find everyone else's faults. Church people do this so good. They're always pointing out everyone else's faults. Sometimes in a marriage, we're pointing out, we see all the things that our mate does wrong, and we don't realize that we are guilty too. And Jesus forgives us, and he asks us to do the same. Will you stand with me?